السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونستهديه ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن سيدنا وحبيبنا وشفيعنا وقدوتنا وأسوتنا وقائدنا وأستاذنا ومعلمنا محمدا عبده ورسوله وصفيه وخليله المبعوث رحمة للعالمين أما بعد فقد قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه الكريم بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون وقال تعالى أيضا يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا وقال تعالى أيضا يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. We start by praising Allah the Exalted and seeking His assistance in all that we do. We ask Allah for forgiveness for all of the sins that we've committed in the past, and we ask Him for guidance for all that we shall do in the future. Whomsoever Allah guides, no one can lead astray, and whoever He leads astray, no one can guide. We express our total trust and reliance in Allah and Allah alone, and we bear witness that there's nothing worthy of worship other than Allah and Allah alone, and we bear witness that Sayyidina Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, is his slave and messenger. Alhamdulillah, the word mu'min, which is a believer, it comes from the word iman. So a mu'min is a person of iman, a person of faith. And the word iman, it has the same root word and it comes from the same word as the word amana. And amana is trust. That's why the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, he actually says, La imana liman la amanata lah. That the person does not have faith if he himself is not a trustworthy person. Amana is trustworthiness. And if a person cannot be trusted, then this is not a person of faith. And what is the link between these two things is that a person of faith has been entrusted. The reason why a person of faith, it comes from the same word as a trust, is because people of faith have a trust that they have to fulfill when they're in this life. We are not here to play. We are not here in vain. We are not here just to pass time. We're not here to just have earnings and to make babies and to eat and drink. If that was the case, we'd be no different than a cow. But the human being has a greater responsibility and a greater purpose for being here, and that is to fulfill the trust that has been given to them from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's to fulfill the trust which Allah refers to in the Quran. بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم إنا عرضنا الأمانة على السماوات والأرض والجبال فأبين أن يحملنها وأشفقن منها وحملها الإنسان إنه كان ظلوما جهولا. That indeed we have presented this trust, this amana, on the heavens and the earth and on the mountains. Allah is telling us that this trust was actually presented to the heavens and the earth and the mountains, but they refused. They refused to bear this trust, but the human being accepted to bear this trust. Indeed, he was very oppressive and ignorant. And this trust, again, is to fulfill the command of Allah, to recognize His oneness, and to live their life with purpose, with meaning. Because if we don't have meaning in our life, if we don't recognize the meaning of our life becomes meaningless. And that's why it's hard for people without meaning to find value in their life. And you see people who don't want to be alive. You see people who are not willing to be alive. And you find people who, even when they have everything, they still aren't satisfied. And even when they have everything, and even when they're all safe, and even when they have all types of drones and jets and bombs falling from the sky, they still feel scared. Because they don't know what the whole purpose of life is to begin with. Whereas you'll find people who maybe have nothing, who can't have breakfast without having fear that, or not a fear, but without having an awareness that this might be their last meal, that a bomb can fall on them. Yet they're eating and smiling. They're eating and they're smiling, and they still lay down at night and go to sleep. And they still have purpose in their life because they understand there's something beyond this world. This is the amana that we've been given. This is how we're supposed to live throughout our life. Not just during times of calamity, and not just during times of emergency, and not just during times of disaster, and not just during times when we are now under duress. The believer doesn't just worship when they're under duress, when they're stressed out, or when things aren't going right. Now we turn to Allah. The believer certainly will turn to Allah when things aren't going right, and when they're under duress, and when things are difficult. But that's not the only time they're supposed to be turning to Allah. Actually, the only way they will truly be able to turn to Allah during those times is if they live outside of those times with that trust and fulfilling that trust. When they live their everyday life the way that they're supposed to, while things are calm and relaxed, this makes it more likely, that they'll be able to stay and remain firm on their faith when things become difficult. Like it's mentioned, for example, that there's a believer who has accustomed himself to calling on Allah at all times, even during times of ease. During times of difficulty, when that person calls on Allah to remove the difficulty, The angels will go to Allah and say, "Oh Allah, your servant so-and-so, who frequently calls on you, we recognize his voice and he's calling on you. He always calls on you. He needs you now. Help him." Because even the angels became familiar with the voice of this person who stayed committed and devoted to Allah even in times of ease. Whereas the person who forgets Allah during times of ease and during times of relaxation, when those difficulties come, naturally they're going to want to turn to Allah. They call on Allah. And then when they call on Allah, the angels will look at one another and say, "Do you recognize this voice? Is this a believer?" And the angels will say to one another, "We don't recognize this voice." And they won't go with the same type of urgency to Allah to intercede on behalf of that person who's calling on Allah, because they don't recognize that voice. So the believer is supposed to accustom themselves to fulfilling the trust of Allah that's been given to them in all moments of their life. We see it even more now when, with all the different craziness and difficulties, we feel more compelled to turn to Allah, and that's normal and that's natural. But a reminder that we have to have also is to stay committed to Allah at all times. We can't wait for things to get all crazy before we turn to Allah. That's why there's a famous hadith where it was narrated on the authority of Sayyidina Anas ibn Malik, may Allah be pleased with him, where he mentions, قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إن قامت على أحدكم القيامة وفي يده فسلة فليغرسها. It's a famous hadith that if the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, said that if the day of judgment were to begin while in the hand of one of you is a sapling, a baby tree that you're getting ready to plant, فليغرسها, then let him finish planting it. It's a really thought-provoking hadith when you think about it. That the day of judgment, we're not talking about even a war breaking out, but the day of judgment is now starting, and you have a sapling, a little baby plant that you're doing some gardening, and you want to now plant this. The Prophet ﷺ said, finish planting it. Now, what is this supposed to mean? It's not to minimize what's happening or now minimize the importance of the day of judgment. Rather, it's the opposite. It's to show you that if you're not ready at that time, don't try to get ready now. There's no point trying to get ready at that point when things are already happening. It's like an exam. There's a pop quiz. Teacher sends out the exams. And now all of a sudden you're scrambling, trying to review and look at your notes for like 10 seconds before the paper comes to you. At that point, what are you going to do? If you weren't ready at that moment, there's no getting ready at that moment. So you have to, as they say, stay ready so you don't have to get ready. This is one of the lessons of the hadith, is that the believer throughout their life should be fulfilling the trust which has been placed upon them to recognize Allah, to worship Allah, to be kind to others, to have good character, to fulfill their duties to one another. So that if things now start to take place, and even if the day of judgment itself were to now be established, you wouldn't have to scramble trying to prepare yourself for that difficulty. This is one of the meanings of that, is that we should remain ready. One of the other things that we kind of learn from that is that the believer in our lives, whatever it is that we're doing, and we know what's happening in the world, we know what's happening in Gaza. May Allah give afiyah and ease and relief to all the believers in Palestine and all over the world who are going through any type of oppression or dhulm. May Allah remove that oppression. May Allah help them against their enemy. May Allah destroy their enemy and wipe them out and remove them, and allow them to live in safety and peace and to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We know what's happening in the world. It could be even very overbearing on us. Like, we don't even feel like, what's the point of even going to work? What's the point of even finishing my degree? What's the point of like going to the gym? You almost feel guilty. I'm really going to go to the gym right now so I can work out? Like that matters? You feel guilty even taking a walk in the park. Like, is this really something I should be doing right now? With all the believers going through all of their hardship, you sometimes even question, how can I even enjoy this ice cream? Your father brought home ice cream, your wife brought home some apple pie, and now you're about to eat it, and you almost feel guilty because of the ease and relaxation that we have. Shouldn't I just be doing something for Allah right now? Shouldn't we be doing something? Shouldn't I be tweeting? Shouldn't I be posting something right now? Shouldn't I go to some protest? You almost feel like, what's the point of continuing with your day-to-day life? One of the meanings of the hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said, if the day of judgment starts and you have a sapling in your hand, finish planting the tree. Finish planting it. Because you still have to carry on with your life. When things are happening in the world, you still have to carry on with your life. And we still have to carry on with our life. We can't no longer be productive, because it's also a trick from Shaitan that when things are happening, we become so overtaken by it and we become so overwhelmed by it, but we don't want to do anything else. And what does it lead to? It leads to just watching hours of videos. It leads to watching hours of tweets. It leads to watching hours of footage of how things are in the world right now and what's taking place. And is that being productive? That's not productive either. To the extent of which we do want to stay informed and be aware of what's happening, going through a screen for hours a day and getting angry because of what's happening in the world, that's not going to help us either. We still have to continue being productive in our lives. We still have to continue being productive in our society. We still have to continue to be productive in our communities. So we can't now just be overwhelmed. Oh my goodness, the sky is falling. What should I do? Keep doing what you're doing if you're already doing what you're supposed to be doing. Now it's different if we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing. If we weren't doing what we're supposed to be doing, then we should reflect. We should try to change the trajectory of our life. We should try to be better. But the lesson again is that we're supposed to already be doing what we're supposed to be doing. And if we are, then keep doing that. If alhamdulillah, you are staying committed to Allah, you're fulfilling your commandments to Allah, you're active in the community, you're coming to the masjid, and you're trying to do what you're supposed to, continue doing that. You don't have to change everything up because of what's happening. Now, there may be some within the community that have to now have a concerted effort towards addressing things that are happening in the world. You may have certain committees or groups of people who have some expertise with what's happening in certain parts of the world, and then you have to have them organize things that can be done as well. But not everyone is going to do that, because not all of us have an expertise in that. So then we have to, number one again, make sure we're doing what we're supposed to as it is, and then continue doing that. And then find out what else it is that we can do. That's one of the reasons why, inshallah, when we were discussing about what to cover tonight in the program, as we, inshallah, we'll be having a community program tonight as well, followed by a dinner that the whole community is invited to. When the discussion came up of what we should cover and what we should discuss, what was decided is, inshallah, we're going to continue reading from a section of hadith of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, alayhi salatu wasalam. The section regarding piety and kinship. We're going to learn the different values of a believer, how to be good to one another, how to be good to our parents, how to be good to our siblings, how to be good to our neighbors, how to be good to our brothers and sisters, and then how to make sure we also maintain that lifestyle through which we will fulfill the trust that's been given to us. We don't have to necessarily now conduct every single program about one specific thing, because we can't just now stop what we're doing. Rather, we have to continue doing what we're doing. And this is one of the best ways to do that. One of the best ways to keep on, to make sure we are being productive and that we are actually helping towards a solution with all the different things going in the world. First and foremost is to make sure that we are fulfilling our responsibilities to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on an individual level, and then hopefully on a family and a familial level with those around us, and then hopefully on the level of a community. May Allah Ta'ala make it easy for all of us to be able to do that. May Allah Ta'ala help us all work together, stay committed to the cause of serving Him in the best way that we can. May Allah Ta'ala help us take a genuine account of what it is we're doing in our life. Try to improve the things that we are flawed in, and try to inculcate those things that we want to be better at. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفروا إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونستهديه ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن سيدنا وحبيبنا محمدا عبده ورسوله أرسله بالحق بشيرا ونذيرا بين يدي الساعة من يطع الله ورسوله فقد اهتدى ورشد ومن يعص الله ورسوله فإنه لا يضر إلا نفسه ولا يضر الله تعالى شيئا. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم بارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد كما باركت على سيدنا إبراهيم وعلى آل سيدنا إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم اغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات الأحياء منهم والأموات. اللهم اشرح صدورنا للإسلام. اللهم حبب إلينا الإيمان وزينه في قلوبنا وكره إلينا الكفر والفسوق والعصيان وجعلنا من الراشدين وجعلنا من الراشدين وجعلنا من الراشدين. اللهم اغفر لأمة محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم. اللهم ارحم أمة محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم. اللهم تجاوز عن أمة محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم. ربنا ظلمنا أنفسنا وإن لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الخاسرين. ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب. اللهم انصر الإسلام والمسلمين وأذل الشرك والمشركين ودمر أعداءك أعداء الدين. اللهم إنا نجعلك في نحورهم ونعوذ بك من شرورهم. اللهم إنا نجعلك في نحورهم ونعوذ بك من شرورهم. اللهم إنا نجعلك في نحورهم ونعوذ بك من شرورهم. اللهم اكفناهم بما شئت. اللهم اكفناهم بما شئت. اللهم اكفناهم بما شئت. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم. وصل اللهم وبارك وسلم على خير خلقك محمد المصطفى الأمين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون. وأقيم الصلاة.
الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة. والله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله.
سووا صفوفكم فإن تسوية الصفوف من إقامة الصلاة. Please do your best to straighten the rows. you have any cell phones, please turn them off or put them on silent. وَصَلُّوا صَلَاةَ الْمُوَدِّعِينَ. And we should pray like this is our last salah. Allahu Akbar. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. سبح اسم ربك الأعلى الذي خلق فسوى والذي قدر فهدى والذي أخرج المرعى فجعله غثاء أحوى سنقرئك فلا تنسى إلا ما شاء الله إنه يعلم الجهر وما يخفى ونيسرك لليسرى فذكر إن نفعت الذكرى سيذكر من يخشى ويتجنبها الأشقى الذي يصلى النار الكبرى ثم لا يموت فيها ولا يحيا قد أفلح من تزكى وذكر اسم ربه فصلى بل تؤثرون الحياة الدنيا والآخرة خير وأبقى إن هذا لفي الصحف الأولى صحف إبراهيم وموسى. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. هل أتاك حديث الغاشية وجوه يومئذ خاشعة عاملة ناصبة تصلى نارا حامية تسقى من عين آنية ليس لهم طعام إلا من ضريع لا يسمن ولا يغني من جوع وجوه يومئذ ناعمة لسعيها راضية في جنة عالية لا تسمع فيها لاغية فيها عين جارية فيها سرر مرفوعة وأكواب موضوعة ونمارق مصفوفة وزرابي مبثوثة أفلا ينظرون إلى الإبل كيف خلقت وإلى السماء كيف رفعت وإلى الجبال كيف نصبت وإلى الأرض كيف سطحت فذكر إنما أنت مذكر لست عليهم بمسيطر إلا من تولى وكفر فيعذبه الله العذاب الأكبر إن إلينا إيابهم ثم إن علينا حسابهم الله أكبر سمع الله لمن حمده الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر السلام عليكم ورحمة الله السلام عليكم ورحمة الله
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Just a reminder, inshallah, we have a halaqah tonight with Imam and Shaykh Musa Sugapong, piety and kinship, and the dinner will be served right after the halaqah, inshallah. And for those who are leaving tomorrow morning to DC, March DC, in DC, please be here at 4:30 a.m. 4:30 a.m. as the bus is planning to leave by 5. Jazakumullah khair, barakallahu fikum, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.